The cargo bay of Station 17 smelled like oil and desperation, and Marcus Chen had spent enough years in places like this to know trouble when it came knocking at his door. He stood beside his ship, the Wandering Star, watching a Krillian merchant approach with that particular walk that said the job wasn't quite legal, not quite safe either. "You haul cargo, yes?" the merchant asked, his forearms gesturing in what Marcus had learned meant nervousness among his kind. "Depends on what you're moving," Marcus replied, crossing his arms. He had learned the hard way that easy money usually came with hard consequences. The Krillian's eyes shifted, all 6 of them, and Marcus felt his gut tighten with warning. "Standard freight, medical supplies for the outer colonies," the merchant said. But his translator chip glitched on the word medical, which meant he was lying. Marcus should have walked away right then, should have climbed back into his ship and found honest work somewhere else. But his accounts were nearly empty, and the Wandering Star needed fuel. "Show me the cargo first," Marcus demanded. 2 hours later, he was loading sealed crates into his hold, each one labeled with medical symbols that looked just official enough to pass a casual inspection. Marcus had been doing this work long enough to know these crates held something far more valuable and far more illegal than medicine. His loading drone beeped in error. One of the crates was too heavy for its classification. Marcus frowned and moved closer, running his scanner over the container. The readings made no sense. There was something organic inside, something with a heat signature. "Hey," he called to the Krillian, who was already backing away toward the dock exit. "What's really in these crates?" The merchant didn't answer. He just ran. Marcus cursed and grabbed a pry bar from his tool belt. In his cargo bay, he needed to know what it was before he went anywhere. The crate seal broke with a hiss of pressurized air, and Marcus stumbled backward as the lid fell open. Inside, curled up among packing foam and restraint straps, was a child. Not a human child. Marcus could see that immediately from the silvery skin and the oversized eyes that reflected light like mirrors. But a child nonetheless, small and thin and clearly terrified. The child's species clicked in Marcus's memory from a cargo manifest he'd seen months ago. Quelon, one of the telepathic races from the inner systems. Peaceful people who rarely left their homeworlds. "Oh no," Marcus whispered, reaching into the crate carefully, his hands shaking. "No, no, no." The child flinched away from him, pressing against the back of the container. There were bruises on their arms, marks from restraints, and their eyes were dilated in a way that suggested heavy sedation. Marcus had seen a lot of bad things in his years hauling freight across the frontier, had looked the other way more times than he cared to admit. But this was different. This was a kid. He scooped the child up gently, feeling how light they were. Too light, like they hadn't been fed properly in weeks, and carried them toward his ship's medical bay. Behind him, his comm unit started screaming alerts. Marcus glanced at the screen and felt his blood run cold. There were messages flooding in from the station's information network. Warnings about Quelon children being trafficked for their neural tissue. Bounties posted for their return to concerned parties. The truth hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't medical cargo at all. This was a living shipment destined for some black market surgeon's table. The child in his arms made a small sound, not quite a whimper, and Marcus felt something inside him snap, something that had been barely holding together since he lost his own daughter 5 years ago. "Not happening," he growled, carrying the child into his ship. "Not on my watch." He laid the child on the medical bed and started scanning them with his basic equipment. The results showed malnutrition, chemical sedation, and signs of psychological trauma that made Marcus's hands curl into fists. The child's eyes followed him as he moved around the medical bay, gathering supplies. There was intelligence there, awareness, and something that looked almost like hope. "Listen," Marcus said softly. not sure if the child could understand human standard language. "I'm getting you out of here. I don't know where home is yet, but anywhere is better than this." The child didn't respond, but their eyes stayed fixed on his face. Marcus strapped the child carefully into the medical bed, not restraints, just safety harnesses, and ran for the cockpit. His fingers flew over the controls, initiating emergency undocking procedures. The station's automated systems protested, demanding he complete his cargo transfer. But Marcus overrode them with codes he'd bought from a hacker 3 ports back. The Wandering Star's engines roared to life. "Come on, baby," Marcus muttered to his ship. "Don't fail me now." Alarms started blaring across the station. Someone had noticed his unauthorized departure. Marcus triggered the emergency pressure doors on the dock, causing chaos and confusion that would buy him precious seconds. It was a dirty trick that would get him banned from Station 17 forever. But he didn't care. The Wandering Star pulled away from the dock just as security drones started swarming. Marcus punched the throttle and felt the acceleration press him back into his seat. Behind him, he heard a small cry from the medical bay. "Hang on," he called back. "This is going to be rough." The ship shuddered as it cleared the station's gravity field. Marcus plotted a jump course with shaking hands, picking a route that would take them away from civilized space, away from the bounty hunters who would surely come looking. Just as his jump drive spun up, his comm board lit up with incoming messages, bounty notices, all with his ship's ID and his face attached. The price on his head made him whistle low. Apparently, the people who wanted that child back were willing to pay a fortune. "Well," Marcus said to himself as the stars stretched into lines and the ship jumped into hyperspace, "I've made worse decisions. Probably." He left the cockpit and returned to the medical bay. The child was still strapped in, eyes wide with fear from the violent maneuvers. Marcus knelt beside the bed and managed what he hoped was a reassuring smile. "Hey there," he said gently. "My name's Marcus. I know you're scared, and I know you don't know what's happening, but I promise you something. Nobody's gonna hurt you while I'm around." The child stared at him for a long moment, then slowly reached out one small hand. Marcus took it carefully, feeling the child's fingers close around his. "I'm going to call you Pip," Marcus said, because the child's real name was probably something he couldn't pronounce with his human vocal cords. "And we're going to figure out how to get you home. I don't care how far it is or who's chasing us." Pip's grip tightened on his hand. "Yeah," Marcus said, feeling something fierce and protective surge in his chest, something he hadn't felt since his own daughter died. "We're going to make it. Humans are stubborn like that." In the darkness of hyperspace, with half the galaxy about to hunt them down, Marcus Chen made a choice that would change everything. He chose to care. And for a human, that was the most dangerous choice of all. 3 days into their flight through the emptiness between stars, Marcus Chen discovered that saving a telepathic alien child came with complications he had never imagined. Pip was getting worse. The child lay in the medical bay, their silvery skin turning dull and gray, their breathing shallow and rapid. Whatever drugs the traffickers had used to suppress Pip's natural abilities were wearing off, and the withdrawal was brutal. Marcus had tried everything in his limited medical database. He had administered fluids, adjusted the atmospheric mixture, even tried playing soft music to calm the child's obvious distress. But nothing seemed to help. "Come on, kid," Marcus whispered, wiping Pip's forehead with a cool cloth. "Don't give up on me now." He had spent the last 2 days trying to contact Quell in space through every channel he could access. Official diplomatic frequencies, merchant networks, even a few smuggler contacts who owed him favors. But every channel was silent. Attempt had hit the same wall. The entire Quellen system was under quarantine. According to the fragmented reports Marcus could find, some kind of plague had swept through the Quellen homeworld 6 months ago. The galactic community had sealed the borders to prevent spread, and nothing got in or out. which meant Pip's family had no idea their child was missing, had no way to know if Pip was even alive. Marcus slammed his fist against the console in frustration, and immediately regretted it when Pip flinched at the sound. "Sorry," he said quickly, moving back to the child's side. "I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at this whole messed-up situation." Pip's eyes opened, those strange mirror-like eyes that seemed to look right through him. The child's mouth moved, trying to form words, but only a weak sound came out. Marcus grabbed his datapad and pulled up a veterinary database he'd downloaded from a frontier colony. Treating Earth animals in alien environments, but he was desperate enough to try anything. He cross-referenced Pip's symptoms with similar cases: neurological distress, chemical dependency, physiological shock, and started improvising a treatment protocol that probably would have horrified any real doctor. Small doses of a metabolic stabilizer meant for dogs, adjusted for Pip's lower body mass. A nutrient paste designed for cats, modified with supplements from his own food stores, and a sedative used for horses, administered in tiny, carefully measured amounts to help Pip sleep through the worst of it. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was the most human thing Marcus had ever done. For the next 36 hours, he didn't sleep. He sat beside Pip's bed, monitoring every vital sign, adjusting dosages based on nothing but instinct and prayer. And slowly, impossibly, it started working. Pip's color began to return, the dull gray fading. Back to healthy silver. The child's breathing steadied, becoming deeper and more regular. Marcus felt tears running down his face and didn't bother to wipe them away. "You're going to make it," he said, his voice cracking with exhaustion and relief. "You hear me? You're going to be okay." That's when the proximity alarms started screaming. Marcus ran to the cockpit and felt his stomach drop. There was a ship on his tail, a sleek Corvette-class vessel with the kind of weapons array that said Bounty Hunter loud and clear. They must have been tracking him through hyperspace, following the trail of his jump signature. Marcus's hands flew over the controls, pulling the wandering star out of hyperspace early. They dropped into normal space near an asteroid field, exactly the kind of dangerous terrain Marcus had been hoping for. "Attention unmarked freighter," a voice crackled over the comm. "Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. You are carrying stolen property." "Stolen property?" Marcus growled, switching off the comm. "That's a kid, you." He bit off the curse and focused on flying. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic maze of tumbling rock that would tear apart any ship then. Didn't have a skilled pilot, or a crazy one. Marcus had always been a bit as both. He dove the wandering star between two massive asteroids, so close their gravitational fields made the hull groan in protest. The bounty hunter followed. Whoever was flying that Corvette had skills. Marcus grinned fiercely. Good. This wouldn't be fun if it was too easy. He cut the main engines and activated maneuvering thrusters only, using tiny bursts of thrust to navigate through gaps that seemed impossible. The wandering star was an old freighter, not built for this kind of flying, but Marcus knew every rivet and weld in her hull. The Corvette fired a warning shot that vaporized an asteroid to Marcus's left. "Warning shot," Marcus muttered. "How polite." He vented coolant from the starboard tanks, creating a cloud of frozen crystals that scattered sensor readings. Then he dove under a cluster of asteroids and came up behind the Corvette. Moment. He had a clean shot. But Marcus wasn't a killer. Instead, he fired at the asteroid above the Corvette, using his ship's mining laser to crack it open. Chunks of rock rained down on the bounty hunter's ship, forcing them to break off pursuit and dodge. Marcus used the distraction to slip deeper into the asteroid field, into a region so dense with debris that his sensors were practically useless. He flew by instinct and memory, taking risks no sane pilot would ever attempt, threading between asteroids with meters to spare, using gravity wells to slingshot around massive rocks, pulling maneuvers that made his ship's structural integrity warnings flash red. Behind him, the Corvette tried to follow, and failed. Marcus heard the impact through his sensors. The bounty hunter had clipped an asteroid at high speed. He didn't stop to check if they survived. He just pushed his ship harder, faster, until the asteroid field was far behind them. Only when the threat was gone did Marcus allow himself to collapse back in his seat, his hands shaking from adrenaline. "That was too close," he said to his empty cockpit. A sound from behind made him turn. Pip stood in the doorway to the cockpit, one small hand gripping the frame for support. The child looked weak but conscious, and those mirror eyes were fixed on Marcus with something that might have been awe. "Hey," Marcus said, jumping up, "you shouldn't be out of bed." He moved to help Pip, but the child took a stumbling step forward. Then something impossible happened. Marcus felt a presence in his mind. Not invasive, not painful, just there, like a gentle knock on a door he hadn't known existed. Images flooded his consciousness. A beautiful world with silver forests and crystal cities. A family with Pip's same mirror eyes, laughing together. Warmth and love and safety. And then darkness, cold metal walls, pain and fear. And loneliness. Marcus gasped and staggered, gripping the console for support. The connection faded, but not before he felt something else from Pip. Gratitude so intense it made his chest ache. "You saw my memories," Marcus whispered, staring at the child. Pip nodded slowly. "And I saw yours," Marcus realized, understanding flooding through him. In that moment of connection, Pip had seen inside his mind too. Had seen the daughter he'd lost, Sarah, only 7 years old when the raiders hit their colony. Had seen his guilt, his failure to protect her, his years of running from that pain. Pip reached out with one small hand and touched Marcus's arm. The child's mouth moved, forming careful words in human standard for the first time. "Thank you, friend." Marcus felt something break inside him, something that had been frozen for 5 long years. He knelt down to Pip's level and gently pulled the child into a hug. "You're welcome, kid," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "And I'm getting you home. I don't care if the whole galaxy is between us and Quellan space. I'll find a way." Pip hugged him back with surprising strength for such a small body. In that moment, Marcus Chen understood something fundamental about humanity. They didn't give up on the people they cared about. They didn't surrender when the odds were impossible. They just got stubborn and kept fighting. "All right," Marcus said, releasing Pip and standing up. "Let's figure out our next move. I can't use the normal space lanes, and I can't go through official channels. But there's always another way." He pulled up a star chart, showing the route to Quellan space. "It's going to be a long trip," Marcus said, tracing the path with his finger. "Through some pretty rough territory, but we're going to make it." Pip stood beside him, looking at the map with those impossibly wise eyes. "Home," the child said softly. "Yeah," Marcus agreed, feeling that fierce protective feeling surge through him again. Home. He set course for the frontier regions, where the maps were incomplete and the law was whatever you made it. Behind them, more bounty hunters would surely follow. Ahead of them lay unknown dangers and impossible obstacles. But Marcus Chen was human, and humans had a talent for making the impossible look easy, or at least for being too stubborn to admit when something couldn't be done. The frontier regions of space had earned their reputation the hard way. This was where the maps ran out, where law meant whatever the strongest ship said it meant, and where people went when they didn't want to be found. Marcus Chen had spent 2 weeks navigating through this darkness, with Pip huddled in the co-pilot's seat beside him. The child had grown stronger since leaving the asteroid field, learning more human words each day and beginning to master the telepathic abilities that had been suppressed for so long. But the bond between them had grown stronger too. Sometimes Marcus would catch flashes of Pip's thoughts without meaning to. Homesickness so intense it made his chest hurt, fear of the traffickers finding them again, and a fierce determination to survive that reminded Marcus why he'd fallen in love with his work among the stars in the first place. People, human or otherwise, could be incredibly resilient when they needed to be. Resilience didn't fill empty fuel tanks or restock food supplies. Marcus stared at the navigation display showing a derelict colony ship drifting in the void ahead. According to sensors, it had been abandoned for months, but its cargo holds might still contain supplies they desperately needed. "Stay here," Marcus told Pip, checking the seals on his pressure suit. "Lock the door behind me, and don't open it for anyone except me. Understand?" Pip nodded, those mirror eyes reflecting Marcus's own worried face back at him. "I'll be quick," Marcus promised. The colony ship loomed in his viewport as he crossed the short distance in his maneuvering pack. It was massive, designed to carry thousands of settlers to new worlds, but now it hung silent and dark against the stars. Marcus forced open the airlock and stepped inside, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. The first thing he noticed was the silence, not the peaceful quiet of an empty space station, ship, but the heavy silence that came after violence. Bloodstains marked the walls, not human blood, but the green ichor of vaccine species, and the blue fluid that flowed in Deltharian veins. Whatever had happened here, it had been brutal. Marcus moved through the corridors carefully, his weapon drawn. The ship's emergency lights flickered weakly, giving just enough illumination to see the signs of struggle everywhere. He found the cargo bay and felt a small surge of relief. Supplies were scattered across the floor, but there were ration packs, medical supplies, and even some fuel cells that would work with the wandering star systems. Marcus started loading everything he could carry into bags. That's when he found the captain's log, a small data chip still clutched in a skeletal hand. Marcus pocketed it. Whatever had happened here, someone should know the truth. He was heading back to the airlock when he heard it, a faint mechanical whir that sent ice through his veins. Someone else was on the ship. Marcus pressed himself against a bulkhead, controlling his breathing. His suit's life support sounded impossibly loud in his ears. A figure emerged from the shadows ahead, tall, heavily armored, with cybernetic implants that glowed with a sickly green light. Vaxon mercenary, Marcus's mind supplied, and not just any Vaxon. This one had the kind of military-grade enhancements that cost more than most ships. The mercenary's helmet turned in Marcus's direction, sensors sweeping the corridor. Marcus held perfectly still, knowing his suit's stealth coating might be the only thing keeping him alive. The mercenary spoke, voice distorted through external speakers. "I know you're here, human. The bounty on your head has grown quite substantial." Marcus didn't respond, didn't even breathe. "The child you stole is valuable to my employers," the Vaxon continued. "Down the corridor. Return it, and I'll make your death quick." Something hot and fierce surged through Marcus's chest. Pip wasn't wasn't property to be stolen or returned. He waited until the mercenary passed his position, then moved. Marcus might not be enhanced with cybernetics or trained in military combat, but he'd survived 20 years in the roughest parts of space. He knew how to fight dirty. He fired his weapon at the corridor's overhead conduits, rupturing the emergency coolant system. Superheated gas exploded outward, filling the hallway with scalding steam. The Vaxon roared in anger and pain, his sensors temporarily blinded. Marcus ran. He sprinted down corridors he'd memorized on his way in, leaping over debris and sliding around corners. Behind him, he could hear the mercenary giving chase, those enhanced legs eating up the distance. Marcus hit the airlock and cycled through, but he knew it wouldn't hold for long. Sure enough, the Vaxon simply ripped the inner door off its hinges. Marcus was already firing his maneuvering pack, rocketing back toward the wandering star. He could see Pip's small face pressed against the viewport, eyes wide with fear. The Vaxon fired, a pulse of energy that missed Marcus by centimeters. Marcus returned fire, not trying to hit the mercenary, but instead targeting the colony ship's hull near the airlock. His shots punched through the weakened metal, and explosive decompression did the rest. The Vaxon was torn from the ship and sent tumbling into space. Marcus didn't stop to watch. He slammed into the Wandering Star's airlock, hard enough to bruise, and Pip had the door open before he could even reach for the controls. "Go!" Marcus shouted, already running for the cockpit. "Pip, strap in now." The child scrambled to comply, as Marcus threw himself into the pilot's seat, bringing the engines online, faster than the safety protocols recommended. Through his rear cameras, he could see the Vaxon using a personal thruster pack to give chase. Those cybernetic enhancements included built-in weapons that were already charging. Marcus punched the throttle. The Wandering Star leaped forward just as energy bolts lanced through the space they'd occupied a second before. But the mercenary was fast, impossibly fast, and gaining. "Marcus!" Pip's voice was frightened, childish, nothing like the telepathic communication they sometimes shared. "I know, kid," Marcus said, pushing his ship harder. "I know." The mercenary was almost on them when Pip did something unexpected. Marcus felt the child's mind reach out, not to him, but to the Vaxon. It wasn't an attack, wasn't violent. It was just a question, projected with all the innocent curiosity of a child. "Why do you want to hurt us?" Back as a confusion of thoughts and orders. He was being paid, had been hired, didn't question his missions. But underneath that, Marcus felt something else through Pip's connection. Doubt. Pip pushed further, showing the Vaxon images from the colony ship, the bodies, the evidence of trafficking, the logs Marcus had recovered. The mercenary hesitated just for a second. Marcus didn't waste the opportunity. He fired the ship's mining laser at a nearby piece of debris, superheating it until it exploded. The shockwave caught the Vaxon and sent him spinning off course. By the time the mercenary recovered, the Wandering Star was already spooling up its jump drive. They leaped into hyperspace, leaving the frontier region behind. Marcus collapsed back in his seat, his whole body shaking with adrenaline. Pip unbuckled and ran to him, small hands gripping his arm. "Safe?" the child asked. "For now," Marcus said, pulling Pip into a one-armed hug. "For now." That night, after Pip had finally fallen asleep in the medical bay, Marcus sat in his quarters and played the data chip from the colony ship. The captain's log painted a horrific picture. The trafficking syndicate had attacked the colony ship specifically to take the alien children aboard. There had been families traveling together, dozens of different species seeking new lives on the frontier. The syndicate had killed anyone who resisted and taken the children, dozens of them. The captain had died trying to protect them. Marcus felt tears running down his face as he listened to the final entry. "If anyone finds this, please, find our children. Bring them home." He made a decision then, one that would probably get him killed, but felt more right than anything he'd done in years. When Pip woke up, Marcus knelt beside the child's bed. "I read the logs from that ship," Marcus said gently. "There are other kids out there, Pip. Kids like you, taken from their families." Pip's eyes widened with understanding. "When we get you home, when you're safe with your family, I'm coming back out here," Marcus continued, his voice steady, despite the fear in his gut. "I'm going to find those other children and free them too." Pip stared at him for a long moment, then reached out and touched Marcus's forehead. A flood of images hit Marcus's mind. Pip's family, warm and loving, Pip safe at home, and Marcus, scarred but smiling, surrounded by grateful parents of a dozen different species. It was a vision, a hope, a promise. Together, Pip said clearly, the child's telepathic abilities filling the word with layers of meaning. Not just the two of them, but a future where they fought side by side against the darkness. Marcus smiled despite himself. "Yeah, kid," he said, ruffling Pip's silver hair. "Together. stretched on forever. But inside, two souls who had found each other against impossible odds were building something the traffickers could never understand. A bond, forged in shared pain, tempered by hope, and strengthened by the most human of traits, the refusal to let evil win without a fight. The quarantine line around Quellen's space looked like a wall of fire against the stars. Marcus stared at a massive fleet arrayed before him. Warships from a dozen different species, all maintaining the blockade that had sealed Pip's homeworld from the rest of the galaxy for 6 months. "That's a lot of guns," Marcus muttered, running calculations that all came back with the same answer. Impossible. Pip pressed closer to the viewport, small hands leaving prints on the glass. The child's telepathic presence in Marcus's mind had grown stronger over their weeks together, and he could feel Pip's desperate longing to go home. So close now, just past that line of warships, but it might as well have been on the other side of the universe. Marcus had spent the last 3 days researching the quarantine, hacking into medical databases and intercepting military transmissions. What he'd found made his blood boil. The plague that supposedly ravaged Quellen. Space wasn't a natural outbreak. It was engineered. The trafficking syndicate had released a bioweapon designed specifically to target Quellen physiology. Not lethal, just debilitating enough to make the entire species dependent on a cure that the syndicate controlled. With Quellen's space sealed off, the traffickers had free rein to take children from isolated communities. No one could call for help. No one could escape. It was monstrous. It was also brilliant in the coldest, most evil way. Marcus had compiled all the evidence he could find. Medical data proving the plague was artificial. Intercepted communications between syndicate members. Financial records showing who profited from the cure sales. But he had no idea what to do with it. The blockade wouldn't listen to a smuggler in a beat-up freighter. They had their orders, and those orders were clear. Nothing crosses the quarantine line. "Marcus," Pip said softly, speaking more human words now than telepathic images. "What do we do?" Before Marcus could answer, his sensors screamed a warning. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace behind them. Big ships, heavily armed. The Syndicate's main fleet had found them. "Of course," Marcus said, his hands already flying over the controls, because this wasn't complicated enough. His comboard lit up with an incoming transmission. A face appeared on screen, human, which somehow made it worse. A woman with cold eyes and a smile that had never known warmth. "Mr. Chen," she said pleasantly, "you've led us on quite a chase." "Director Cross," Marcus replied, recognizing her from the intelligence reports he'd stolen. "Head of Syndicate Operations. I'd say it's a pleasure, but my mother taught me not to lie." Cross's smile widened. "The Quellen child is property of our organization," she said. "We're willing to overlook your theft and the damage you've done. Caused, if you return it immediately." "Pip isn't property," Marcus snapped. "And you know what? I'm done running." He cut the transmission and opened a channel to every ship in the area. The blockade, the Syndicate fleet, any vessel within range. "This is Marcus Chen, captain of the civilian freighter Wandering Star," he broadcast. "I'm transmitting data on an open channel. Medical evidence, financial records, intercepted communications, everything proving that the Quellen plague is artificial, and that the Syndicate is using it to traffic children." He uploaded everything he'd gathered, flooding every frequency with proof of the Syndicate's crimes. Cross's face reappeared on his screen, no longer smiling. "You just signed your death warrant," she said coldly. "Yeah, probably," Marcus agreed. "But at least everyone knows the truth now. Pip, hold on." He punched the throttle and aimed directly at the quarantine line. The Wandering Star leaped forward, her old engines screaming in protest. Behind them, the Syndicate fleet opened fire. Marcus threw his ship into a wild corkscrew pattern, dodging energy bolts that turned empty space into a light show. The blockade ships ahead activated weapons, targeting both Marcus and the Syndicate vessels. "Come on," Marcus whispered. "You saw the data, you know what they've been doing. Make the right choice." An energy bolt clipped the Wandering Star's port engine, and the ship lurched violently. Pip cried out in fear. Marcus fought the controls, keeping them on course toward the blockade, even as his ship started falling apart around him. More hits, shields failing, hull breaches on decks 3 and 5, life support compromised. "Marcus," Pip's voice was terrified. "I know," Marcus shouted back, "but we're not stopping. We're going home." The blockade opened fire. For a heart-stopping moment, Marcus thought they were targeting him, but then he saw the energy beams lance past the Wandering Star and slam into the Syndicate flagship. The blockade had chosen. They were engaging the Syndicate. Marcus would have cheered if he wasn't busy trying to keep his dying ship flying. The gap in the blockade opened ahead of them. Just a narrow corridor between warships that were now locked in combat with the Syndicate fleet. Marcus aimed for that gap and pushed his ruined engines as hard as they would go. Alarms filled the cockpit. Critical failures across every system. They were going to make it through the blockade, but they weren't going to survive the landing. "Pip," Marcus said, his voice surprisingly calm, "I need you to do something for me." The child looked at him with those mirror eyes. "When we crash, and we are going to crash, I need you to reach out with your mind," Marcus explained, working the controls with one hand, while the other strapped emergency crash webbing around himself. "Call to your people, show them we're coming. Them, everything." "But you?" Pip started. "I'll be fine," Marcus lied, because the structural integrity warnings were telling a different story. "Just promise me you'll call for help." Pip nodded, tears flowing down silver cheeks. They crossed the quarantine line. Ahead of them, Quellen Prime hung in space like a silver jewel, beautiful and close and completely unreachable at their current trajectory. The Wandering Star's remaining engine exploded. The ship went into an uncontrolled tumble, spinning end over end toward the planet's gravity well. Marcus couldn't stop it, couldn't even slow it down. "Now, Pip," he shouted. "Call them now." He felt the child's mind open like a flower, telepathic energy flooding outward with a power that made Marcus gasp. Pip didn't just call for help. The child broadcast everything. Every memory of their captivity, every moment of fear and pain, every second of Marcus's stubborn determination to save them. The wild flight through asteroid fields, the desperate escape from mercenaries, the long journey through the dark, all of it flowed out from Pip's mind in a wave of pure emotional truth that crashed over Quellen Prime like a tsunami. Millions of telepathic minds felt it, knew it, understood it, and they answered. Marcus saw defense platforms powering up, but not to fire, to project tractor beams. Rescue craft launched from the planet's surface, racing toward them. "Hold on," someone said over the comm in accented human standard. "We're catching you." Multiple tractor beams locked onto the Wandering Star, slowing their suicidal descent. It wasn't gentle. The ship groaned and buckled under the strain, but it was working. Marcus looked at Pip and saw the child's face radiating hope. "We made it," Marcus whispered. Then the ceiling collapsed. Marcus threw himself over Pip, feeling metal and debris slam into his back. Pain exploded through his body. The last thing he heard before darkness took him was Pip's telepathic scream echoing across an entire world. "Save him! Please save him! He saved me!" Then nothing. When consciousness returned, it came slowly, like swimming up from deep water. Marcus opened his eyes and found himself in a medical facility unlike anything he'd ever seen. Walls that glowed with soft light, equipment that hummed with power he couldn't identify, and a ceiling covered in what looked like living crystal. A Quellen doctor stood over him, their mirror eyes studying him with professional concern. "Awake?" the doctor asked, in perfect human standard. "Pip," Marcus croaked, his throat dry. "The child is well," the doctor assured him, "reunited with their family, and telling everyone about the brave human who saved them." Marcus tried to sit up, and gasped at the pain in his ribs. "You sustained significant injuries," the doctor said, pressing him gently back down. "Broken bones, internal bleeding, severe trauma. But our medical technology is quite advanced." "The Syndicate?" Marcus asked. "Their fleet was destroyed by the combined forces of the blockade," the doctor replied. "The evidence you transmitted has triggered a galaxy-wide investigation. Already, dozens of trafficking rings are being dismantled." Marcus closed his eyes, relief washing over him. "The other children?" he asked. "Being located and rescued as we speak," the doctor said softly. "Because of you. Because of him, a human smuggler who'd just been trying to do the right thing." "Rest now," the doctor said. "You have visitors waiting, but they can wait until you've healed." Marcus wanted to stay awake, wanted to know what happened next, but his body had other ideas. He drifted back into healing darkness, knowing that for once in his life, he'd done something that mattered. Something worth the scars he'd carry forever. Healing on an alien world felt stranger than Marcus had imagined. Stranger and somehow more peaceful than anything he'd experienced in years. The Quellan medical facility had kept him for 3 weeks, knitting broken bones and repairing internal damage with technology that seemed like magic to his human eyes. Now, walking through gardens of silver trees, under a sky that shimmered with colors Earth's atmosphere could never produce, Marcus felt almost guilty for being here when there was still so much work to be done. "You are thinking too loud," a familiar voice said, and Marcus looked down to see Pip walking beside him. The child looked healthy now, properly fed, wearing traditional Quellan garments that flowed like liquid mercury, surrounded by a family whose love radiated from every telepathic touch. Pip's parents walked a respectful distance behind, giving them space, but never letting their child out of sight. Marcus understood that need better than anyone. "Sorry," Marcus said, just thinking about everything that needs to happen next. Pip's hand slipped into his. The child had taken to physical contact since learning that humans didn't communicate telepathically the way Quellans did. "You saved many children already," Pip said. "The ones from the trafficking ships, they are going home." Marcus nodded, knowing that rescue operations were underway across a dozen systems. The evidence he'd transmitted had exposed the full scope of the Syndicate's operations, and the galactic community had responded with unusual unity. Criminal organizations were being dismantled, corrupt officials arrested, and trafficked children returned to their families. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough until every child was safe. They reached a crystal pavilion overlooking the capital city. Thousands of Quellans had gathered there, and Marcus felt his stomach tighten with discomfort. Wasn't good with crowds, especially crowds that were all telepathically connected and probably reading his every anxious thought. "It's okay," Pip whispered, squeezing his hand. "They just want to say thank you." A delegation approached, important-looking Quellans, wearing robes covered in symbols Marcus didn't recognize. The eldest among them stepped forward and bowed. "Marcus Chen," the elder said in human standard that was far more formal than Pip's casual speech. "On behalf of the Quellan Convergence, we offer you our deepest gratitude." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what anyone would," he started. "No," the elder interrupted gently. "You did what most would not. You risked everything for a child who was not your own, of a species you barely knew, with no expectation of reward." The crowd behind the elder hummed with agreement, a sound that Marcus felt in his bones. "The Quellan people are in your debt," Elder continued. "We offer you anything within our power to give. Wealth, technology, a home among us if you wish it." Marcus looked out at the alien city, beautiful and peaceful and utterly foreign. This wasn't his home. It never would be. "I appreciate the offer," Marcus said carefully, "but there's something I need more than wealth or technology." The elder tilted their head in curiosity. "Help," Marcus said simply. "I want to help rescue the other children still out there, the ones being trafficked, the ones the syndicate still has hidden away. The crowd went silent. Even Pip's telepathic presence in his mind seemed to pause. The galaxy is large, the elder said slowly. Such a task would take years, perhaps a lifetime. I know, Marcus replied. That's why I need your help. Quellan telepaths could locate hidden facilities, track communications, find children that normal searches would miss. Eyes studied him intently. You would dedicate your life to this? They asked. Marcus thought about his daughter Sarah, about how he'd failed to protect her. He thought about Pip, trembling in that cargo crate. He thought about all the other children, still waiting for someone to care enough to save them. Yes, Marcus said firmly. Someone has to. The elder exchanged glances with the other delegates. Marcus felt the subtle ripple of telepathic communication flowing between them. Finally, the elder nodded. The Quellan convergence will support this mission. Something tight in his chest finally loosened. This was right. This was what he was meant to do. Pip tugged on his hand, pulling him away from the formal gathering toward a quieter corner of the gardens. You're really going back out there? The child asked, and Marcus heard the sadness beneath the words. Yeah, kid, Marcus said, kneeling to Pip's level. But not right away. I need to heal properly, and there's a lot of planning to do. I will miss you, Pip said simply. Marcus pulled the child into a hug. I'll miss you too, he said, but we'll stay connected. You showed me that, remember? That telepathic link you gave me. Pip nodded against his shoulder. And when you're older, if you want to, you can help with the mission, Marcus added. We're going to need telepaths who understand what it's like. Pip pulled back, those mirror eyes shining with tears and hope. Promise? The child asked. Promise, Marcus confirmed. A new presence approached. Pip's mother, moving with the grace all Quellans seemed to possess. She knelt beside them and touched Marcus's face gently. He felt her gratitude flood through the contact, wordless but profound. You gave me back my child, she said, her human standard heavily accented. I can never repay such a gift. Take care of Pip, Marcus said. That's all the payment I need. She nodded, tears flowing freely now. Pip's father joined them, and suddenly Marcus found himself surrounded by a family thanking him in a mixture of words and telepathic impressions that made his heart swell. The human mind struggled to process it all. But beneath the complexity, one message came through clear. You are family now. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. Marcus worked with Quellan engineers to design a new ship, not a warship, but a fast, well-equipped vessel designed for rescue operations. He met with representatives from a dozen species, all eager to contribute to the anti-trafficking task force. He gave testimony to galactic courts, watching as the syndicate's leadership faced justice. And through it all, Pip was there, teaching him how to use the telepathic link properly, showing him Quellan history, making him promise to visit between missions. The day came when everything was ready. Marcus stood in the landing bay, looking at his new ship, sleek, powerful, and bearing a name he'd chosen carefully. The Second Chance. Pip stood beside him, along with what seemed like half the planet's population. Careful? Pip asked, for the 100th time. Always, Marcus lied, because careful wasn't really his style. Pip laughed. The child could sense his thoughts through their link. You'll be brave and reckless and impossibly human, Pip said, and you'll save so many. That's the plan, Marcus agreed. He climbed the boarding ramp, then turned for one last look at the alien world that had become something like home. At the child who had taught him that failure wasn't final, that he could still be the protector he'd always wanted to be. Thank you, Pip, Marcus called down, for giving me this. Thank you for giving me everything, Pip called back. Marcus raised his hand in farewell. The boarding ramp closed. Minutes later, the Second Chance rose into the silver sky of Quellan Prime, climbing toward the stars where countless children waited for rescue. In his mind, Marcus felt Pip's presence, warm and constant, encouraging, Go, friend, Pip's telepathic voice whispered. Save them, like you saved me. Marcus grinned fiercely. That's exactly what I'm going to do, he said aloud. The ship jumped to hyperspace. 3 months later, Marcus Chen stood outside a locked facility on a backwater moon, surrounded by a team of specialists from 4 different species. They'd tracked this place through intercepted communications and telepathic scanning. 16 children inside, all from different worlds, all waiting to be sold. Ready? Marcus asked his team. They nodded. Marcus kicked in the door. The raid was quick and brutal. The traffickers never had a chance against a team that included Quellan telepaths, Vaxxan soldiers who defected to the cause, and one very angry human who'd made this his life's mission. Afterward, Marcus sat with the rescued children while they waited for their families to arrive. A small Delpharian girl climbed into his lap, her blue skin marked with bruises. Are we really going home? She asked in her species' clicking language. Marcus's translator rendered it into human standard. Yes, he promised. You're really going home. The girl hugged him tight. In his mind, Marcus felt Pip's approval ripple across the light years that separated them. This was what humans did. They saw suffering, and they couldn't look away. They saw impossible odds, and they attacked them anyway. They saw children in danger, and they became heroes, not because they were special or powerful, but because they simply refused to accept a universe where children weren't safe. Marcus Chen had lost his own daughter years ago, but in saving Pip, he'd found a purpose. And in that purpose, he'd discovered something fundamental about humanity. They didn't need to be the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced. Needed to care. And when humans cared about something, when they decided something mattered, they would move heaven and earth to make it right. Or in this case, every star in the galaxy. The Delpharian girl fell asleep in his arms. Marcus looked up at the alien stars and smiled. There were more children to save, more families to reunite, more impossible missions to complete. And Marcus Chen, human, stubborn, and impossibly determined, would see every single one through. Because that's what humans did. They saved people. Even when, especially when, everyone said it couldn't be done. Years later, when historians studied the fall of the great trafficking syndicates, they would point to many factors: technological advances, improved cooperation between species, stronger laws and enforcement. But those who were there, the rescued children, the grateful families, the telepaths who felt the shift in the wind, would all remember one thing. Those humans did what no one thought possible. Galaxy's conscience. They knew the truth. It started with one human who freed one child and refused to stop. That was all it took. One person deciding that enough was enough. The galaxy had learned something about humanity that day. They were terrifying when you hurt their children, even when those children belonged to someone else. Humanity. Fuck yeah.